Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Friday, September 13th. It is Friday the 13th. I hope everybody had a wonderful day so far. I hope everybody is looking forward to a great weekend of football. In this show today, we are going to be covering a lot of it. Of course, it is Friday, so it's going to be a prediction-filled episode. Before we do our predictions, we're going to break down that Thursday night football game between the Dolphins and the Bills, talk a little bit about the big storyline coming out of it today, which is Tua Tagovailoa and his injury. Then, of course, like I said, predictions. We're going to get into NFL predictions. We're going to get into some of the big college games, predict those. There's a couple of those tonight as well, so we're not just skipping a day of football. And then we're going to do our MLB power rankings as we do every single Friday. We are getting towards the end of the season. Cannot wait for that. But before we get into it, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today talking about Tua and the Dolphins. The Dolphins, before we get into Tua, obviously that is the big story coming out of that game. Tua Tagovailoa sustains another scary-looking concussion, and we will break that down. But before we do, I want to talk about the game itself. Obviously, like I said, Tua is the big story, but the Bills absolutely dominated Miami, with or without Tua in that game. They win 31-10. And I want to put a little bit of a spotlight on a Bills defense that I personally have been kind of putting down a lot this season. They went and they played the Cardinals. The Cardinals offense went off on them. And I know the Bills have been very good against the Dolphins, a division opponent. You generally have a better understanding of what they're going to do, especially if they have some kind of continuity like the Dolphins have. You have a better understanding of how to attack that offense. But when we were previewing the game yesterday, I said the winner of this game would be the one whose defense makes the plays. Now, I incorrectly said it was going to be the Dolphins' defense that makes those plays. I'll take that on the chin. I was wrong. It was the Bills' defense that made those plays. They intercept Tua 3 times last night. The first one wasn't really his fault, throwing to Du Bois, who buried all the way down there on the depth chart. It kind of bounces off of his chest into the arms of a defender. Not the greatest throw, but it was a good timing throw. It hit him in the chest. He should have caught it. Not Tua's fault. Defense makes a great play on it, sets them up for the first of 3 James Cook touchdowns on the day on a little swing pass on 4th and 3. His second interception, he overthrows Robbie Chosen, formerly known as Robbie Anderson. He just overthrows him. There was a little bit of a miscommunication. He kind of settled down instead of kept on going. Again, I'm not going to say that's entirely on Tua. The last one, that is on Tua. He was trying to throw the ball away, didn't get enough juice on it, ends up being a pick 6. So that's 3 turnovers, leading to 17 points for the Bills. If the Dolphins play clean football, this is a 14-10 game, and we're looking at a very different story right now. As opposed to a 21-point loss, it's only a 4-point loss. Now, offenses outside of the 2 running backs on their teams weren't very effective. Now, the Dolphins, again, they didn't have Tua for a little over half the game, or a little under half the game, right? But Skylar Thompson looks solid. We've seen Skylar Thompson come in and do his thing before, played in a playoff game against these Buffalo Bills, took them down to the wire. Skylar Thompson is a quarterback that can sustain this Dolphins team, not to the same level, but they can continue to be a productive offense under him, especially if they have time. The Bills' offense I was a little concerned by. And again, maybe that gives props to the Dolphins' defense. Maybe I should be doing that. But outside of James Cook, they weren't able to get really much going. Josh Allen didn't do a lot with his legs, and that was probably part of the game plan that they stressed after he took a couple of hard hits in the game in week 1. but he didn't do much with his legs, which is a big part of that offense. Now, James Cook, like I said, went off. 3 total touchdowns. That 49-yard run to really open the game up in the second quarter. But then we get to the third quarter. All props to the Bills. Tua and the Dolphins are driving. 5 minutes to go in the game. Fourth down. They need a conversion. Tua runs for it. Collides headfirst with DeMar Hamlin. And at first glance, you look at that hit and you say, hey, it didn't look that bad, right? It wasn't helmet to helmet. It wasn't like any kind of massive thing. Tua just lowers the shoulder, tries to go into him, and he takes the worst of the blow. He goes down, and immediately you can tell something's up, right? He reaches up to the sky kind of with a clenched fist a little bit, and it kind of reminds you of what happened against Cincinnati a couple years ago on Thursday night. And, of course, then he curls up into the fetal position, and the rest is history. He has another concussion, and this is very concerning for Tua. There's been a lot of speculation in the last 24 hours or so about what his future holds. And it's definitely a question to ask. Will Tua ever suit up in the NFL again? I'm not too positive he will. We take a look at his injury history, starting with those concussions. In just the last 3 seasons, including this one, he's had 4 known concussions. 4 known concussions. He had the one against the Bills in 2022, Week 3. Then, of course, the one on Thursday Night Football against the Bengals a week later, where we saw him have to get carted off the field. And then another later on that year against the Packers, where his head got slammed against the turf. That's 3 in 1 season. He was talking about retiring after that year. Family was saying, hey, maybe you retire. Instead, he comes back, puts up a great year, earns money, gets paid that contract in the offseason. Then just 2 weeks into this season, he gets another concussion. But it's not just concussions he's had to go through. At Alabama, he had that hip injury. He's had to deal with a bunch of different physical ailments throughout his entire career. If I am part of his family, and this is how I'm looking at it. If I'm part of Tua's family, I don't think I want him back on that field. He's a guy that, by all accounts, seems to be a great person on and off the field. You just don't want to see him get hurt anymore. And it's coming to that point where every time he runs, every time he takes a hit, he's just more likely than anybody else in football to get a concussion, because that's how it works. The more concussions you have, the more likely you are the easier it is to get one, right? And there's some kind of number. I don't have it up in front of me. I think it's 4 or 5 concussions where the risk of developing CTE is just massively exponentially higher. And he's either at that point or he's getting to that point. And I think there needs to be a very serious discussion about whether or not he comes back to the field. The money part, he doesn't need to worry. He's gotten $73 million in career earnings. He's done well for himself. He's done well for his family. That's not even including off the field stuff. If he retires, I'm sure the Dolphins aren't going to pay him the whole $93 million that's guaranteed with his contract, but I'm sure they'll work something out to maybe give him half of it, give him an extra $50 million to go live his life. Not going to get that full 212, but the situation I'm looking at from the outside in, when I watched that hit, I thought there was a real chance that we would see him retire last night at the podium. Come up after the game, kind of like Andrew Luck did in that preseason game, retire just retire right there. They were reporting that he had discussions with his family in the locker room, somber mood, and Mike McDaniel came out and basically said, hey, we're not going to put a timetable on it. He seems unsure about what's going to happen. Obviously, the rumblings from the media, from everywhere around the world of football, is they're not sure if he's coming back, and that's just the right sentiment to have. Mike McDaniel comes out today and says, hey, people shouldn't be speculating on if he's retiring or not. But as much as I want to agree with his sentiment, this needs to be a discussion that's had. Injuries, we've seen what CTE can do to some players, confirmed, non-confirmed. Everyone just wants Tua to be able to be himself after football. He's earned enough money. I think it's time for him to hang it up. And I'm not going to be the one that says if he goes out on the football field, he'll never be able to be the same, because he's proven he's been able to avoid concussions, avoid taking a big hit like he did all of last season. But he had bulked up for that. Then he got a little skinnier, lost a little weight, decided he wanted to be able to move around a little more, and we see what happens again. So either he needs to be able to play with his 2023 weight, get back up those 15, 20 pounds that he lost this offseason, or he needs to have this discussion. And it's not on me to decide. It's not on you to decide. It's on him, his family, and probably it should be a medical professional's kind of decision. I don't want to, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, one more concussion and he'll never be the same, because I don't know how that works, right? That's a very complicated situation there. But I would not be shocked if Tua does not play another snap in the NFL ever again. And I think that's probably the right decision. Would I be shocked if he comes back and plays? Absolutely not, because he's a guy that I think, from all reports, seems like he loves the game, wants to keep playing the game, loves playing the game of football at the highest level. So maybe he comes back, but I'm very concerned as a family. I feel like he kind of got that one more and you're done kind of talk after 2022, and he's hit that one more. We'll see what happens, though. The Dolphins obviously want him back. It's going to be a decision between him and his family. We'll keep you updated on everything regarding Tua, but just hope everything's good with him. I definitely don't think he plays next week. We're not putting a timetable on him. The Dolphins aren't putting a timetable on him, which makes me think it's at least going to be a week that he's out, minimum. I don't think he comes back and plays, though. I think he's done for the year, and maybe for his whole career. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to switch into some prediction mode. I'll get out my crystal ball. We'll talk about the NFL schedule for this weekend. We've got 15 games on the slate, or 14, excuse me. We're not going to do Monday Night Football. We've got 14 games on the slate to go over. We're going to go through them, why I have each team winning, and I'll even give you a score prediction. We'll see how many of those we can get right. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.